You're listening to the BBMA podcast.
Hi, everyone. This is Anjali, the marketing director for 2025. I'm joined here today with Dr. Laura Brown. Dr. Brown, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi. So my name is Laura Brown. I am a large animal veterinarian in Cortland, New York at Midstate Veterinary Services. And I have been here at Midstate for 15 years. I grew up in Vermont as a second generation veterinarian. My father practiced large animal medicine right on the border of Vermont, New York for about 30 years and wanted to follow in his footsteps. So I'm doing pretty much the exact same thing, but about 4 hours west of where he practiced. I went to Cornell and for vet school. Shortly after graduation, fell in love with my husband, who is a dairy farmer. So I have been stuck here. You'd think that dairy farmers would be transplantable, but I found that's not the case, that they don't transplant very effectively. But I worked as an associate for the first 12 years and then bought into the practice a couple years ago now. My business partner, Jen's son, does the vast majority of the small animal overseeing here, and she would love to join us, but she is undergoing some significant health challenges. So I have some responses to questions for her that I can help relay, but she unfortunately can't be here in person.
And thank you so much for that. Yeah, we wish Jen was here too, but we're happy to have you. And so with that, let's kick things off with my first question, which is, what challenges do you face as a mixed animal practitioner?
So our practice is large. We have 12 doctors. We have about 30 staff total, and we see lots of species, which is, I think, a huge advantage because we can service a huge demographic, doing cattle and horses and small animals, small ruminants, some pig work as well. So that, I think, is wonderful. From a management side of things, it can be kind of tricky to be managing essentially 3 different practices within one umbrella. So we have our equine practice, we have our bovine practice, and we have our small animal practice. So managing them as one is tricky. We try and sort of individually manage them, which also can be tricky, but it's something that we're learning. So neither of us had a lot of business experience prior to becoming partners, and we've had to kind of learn as we go where our strengths and weaknesses are. The 3 different businesses are very unique. A cattle practice is certainly not the same as running a small animal practice. So that can be challenging to kind of meld them together. But we, try and focus on the good parts of all of the different practices and then try and boost up the parts that we feel are lacking. And we rely heavily on our office manager. She does a lot of the heavy lifting, and we focus a lot on trying to ensure that our medical services and treatments are both financially sound and fair to all parties.
Just a side question, do all of your doctors practice mixed, or are there some doctors that practice different?
No, so our small animal doctors are all small animal only, and then our large animal doctors do either cattle only, cattle and horses, or horses only. So we have a mix of all the different things, which is sometimes challenging, especially when it comes to scheduling, emergency coverage and that. We've got people that are 3 days a week. We have people that are 4 days a week. We have one equine only. We have a couple bovine only. So, and then there's a handful of us that do both equine and bovine, and they're Yeah, it can be a bit of a headache, but in general, it is fantastic. We absolutely love our employees. They're the best of the best.
Wow, as a small animal girly, I wouldn't really think about the challenges with that, especially scheduling, right? But yeah, I can imagine that that can definitely be difficult at times.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a new grad that is considering a career in mixed animal medicine and mixed animal ownership?
Yeah. So I will read Dr. Jen's response on this and then maybe add a little bit of my own opinion. But she said, practice ownership can be highly rewarding, but you only get out of it what you put into it. I think most of us are underprepared as veterinarians for ownership. She said, I had to take basic accounting classes and have spent a few years diving into psychology of managing employees and how to empower them to perform their best. And similar to veterinary medicine, the amount of CE is unending when it comes to management as well. Similar to starting practice, I don't think you will ever feel fully prepared. But if you truly care about your clients, patients, and employees and work on all their behalf, then you can't go wrong. Which I think is a spot on answer and
Yeah.
very eloquent as usual. So I think that the one piece of advice I would have for a veterinarian considering mixed animal medicine alone, much less ownership, is that you have to give yourself some grace because it's a big ask to be able to practice on lots and lots of different species. And you can get really good. I think same as, in owning a practice, you can probably get really good at managing one section of that if you dedicate all your time. If you're spreading your time out amongst like essentially 3 different business models, 3 different species, it's going to take more time and a lot of effort. So don't get discouraged. But I do think the benefits of being able to have all of these different people under our umbrella is that you can really let people, figure out what their niche is and support them in something that they really enjoy doing. So, for instance, one of our newer associates really wanted to start doing breeding soundness exams on bulls. And that's not a service that we've offered in the past, mostly because we didn't have somebody that was really interested in doing it. And he said, yeah, I think that this would be a great service for our clients. They want us to do it. Let's do it. So we said, go for it. Like send us a request for, the equipment purchases that you need to do and, how you think we could implement this as a service for our clients. And he did that and he, has all the equipment now and he's going to be doing a couple demos at one of his farms he's really comfortable with and then building that up as something that's kind of his part of the practice that will bring value not only financially but also for all of these people that throw a random bull in their pasture with their beef cows, being able to make sure that that bull is going to be performing is great. And so finding those niches for different people I think adds a lot of buy-in to what they're doing and excitement and passion for what they're doing, and that I think helps create longevity and hopefully reduce the risk of burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's awesome that you guys allow new grads and newer people to the hospital to have a sense of autonomy, right? Like that's his
Yes.
project and it makes him feel good about it. And it's something that is kind of just for him. It's just like, I think for me, I've never personally experienced or done acupuncture or seen it, but if I wanted to pursue that, I would want to work for a hospital that would support that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that you guys are supportive of it and you're willing to get the equipment necessary and all of that. Because there's a lot of hospitals that are just like, no, no, the first answer is no. And then the second answer is we'll put a whole project together of why this is beneficial. And it's just like, well, it's a different revenue stream. There's people that want it and need it. And, we can provide a service that we don't already have.
Yeah. And, otherwise people would be, calling other people to do that service. And so we have another associate that was really interested in learning chiropractic. So she went and did all the, the chiropractic spinal manipulation classes. And now she's going to be doing the acupuncture class. And having that modality, those different modalities to be able to even refer in-house for things. So if I see a lameness that I think would really benefit from her, other services, then instead of having to send it to a different practitioner, I can, refer it in-house, which I love, supporting the people that are supporting me. It's a wonderful, very, inclusive relationship. And I think that also helps foster, teamwork and, a sense of like, this is not just one person's case, that we're going to try and as a team address whatever issues are going on. Preventative medicine, sometimes we work together on different vaccination protocols and different, strategies for dealing with disease outbreaks and stuff. And that teamwork in a group practice is vital to survival. Everybody has to get along. And the more we can function as a unit instead of as individual doctors under one umbrella, I think the better it is for everybody involved.
What would you say were some of the biggest obstacles you faced when it comes to mixed animal ownership and just being a mixed animal practitioner?
So I think actually right now it's having time to spend in the clinic. Like I'm pretty accustomed to being out on farm all day, every day. And, prioritizing spending time on management stuff and business stuff has been a challenge for me. And I think partly it's mental. I feel like I'm not generating money. I'm not actually billing per hour for what I'm doing. So it's not valuable, but it is indeed valuable. And that's a changing mindset for me has been challenging. On the mixed animal medicine side of things, it's physically demanding. To go palpate, a couple hundred cows is not easy. And I got kicked yesterday, which doesn't happen very often, but my leg hurts today. So the physicality and like the weather conditions sometimes can be challenging when it's -12 and you're outside for a long time. But I also got to drive around in the most scenic fall we've had in years. Like I had to pinch myself while driving. Like this is my job, is I'm driving farm to farm through the most gorgeous fall leaves you could ever imagine. I had like a little break in my schedule last Monday and I was like, I'm going to go for a run. I had my running shoes in my truck and I'm like, this is real life. Like this is awesome. I love it. But getting back to your question, there's no manual on how to be, or maybe there is, I just haven't read it, on how to be a mixed animal practice owner. So a lot of that has come with, various different CE opportunities, as well as kind of learning on the fly and helping create the culture that we want in our practice. So when I started at this practice, I wouldn't necessarily say that it had like a very warm and fuzzy culture. And that was 15 years ago. Veterinary medicine was a bit different back then. But we're trying really hard to create a culture of acceptance and compassion for both the employee and the patients, because we want people to love what they're doing. This is in my class alone, when I graduated from vet school, there were a number of us that all wanted to do cattle medicine. And I think there's only 2 of us now that are actually still in private practice doing hands-on day-to-day work. And that is a huge attrition rate. A lot of them are still in industry or other veterinary, adjacent things. But as far as private practice, I think there's only 2. And I don't want that to be the future. I want more people to want to be doing what I'm doing long term and not need to escape from it because it's impossible to have a career and a family and a life. I want to prove that that's not the case.
That number is quite shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, I guess there's some really awesome benefits, right? Like you're just like taking a moment to recognize the weather is so huge sometimes, like especially when you're having a rough day or all of that. I definitely see the pros and cons. So that's awesome. How do you navigate the responsibilities of being a practice owner and a mother? Are there any specific challenges or joys that stand out in managing both roles? And how do you do it all?
Yeah. Well, I'll read Jen's response to this first. because mine is relatively similar. So she wrote, ha, 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 that is a great question. I think anybody who is used to being really good at things, it's really hard to not have both constantly in the back of your mind if you're focused on the other. She personally set certain boundaries. Like if my son had a soccer game or a concert, I'd have it scheduled into my schedule at work to make sure that I got there. But on other nights, I might be late for dinner if I get caught up at work. It's a pendulum that just swings back and forth depending on the situation, but you can make priorities and make sure that you get all of the important things. Being on call is certainly the toughest, but with a team approach, you can also make sure that you're not on call if you have something important. So I think kind of thinking ahead is really important. But my kid came to work with me yesterday because he was sick. All day he was in the truck. And we've trained our clients that sometimes that is the best case situation is that I have a sick kid with me. And sometimes we need to stay home with our sick kids, and that is okay. And I definitely put anything, I have parent teacher conferences in my schedule on our big group scheduling app because that's a priority and I'm going to schedule my day to be able to be there. That being said, every Monday night I'm on call. So I don't make any plans for Monday nights because I know that probably any plans I make are going to get changed. But my kids actually like coming on calls, and the clients usually, as long as it's a safe situation, the clients usually really like having them around, We sewed up a horse Monday night who had a couple of big lacerations, and I had 3 little girls helping me, not my little girls, but friends that they all want to be veterinarians. And, having being able to share those experiences with people is really rewarding and really fun. And I grew up riding in my dad's truck all the time and watching him do what he did. And that sparked this, interest in me that held on and still is there. So I hope to be able to do that with my kids, whether they go into veterinary medicine or not, at least be interested in animals and agriculture and learning about new ways of doing things. It is work. I think work-life balance is kind of a big phrase that's being used a lot. I don't know that it ever exists, but you can put priority into work and life, and figure it out along the way. Being pregnant as a working vet is challenging. I had hyperemesis while I was pregnant with both of my boys, so I threw up all day, every day for 9 months times 2. And that was miserable, but I got through it, and I had a really supportive group of coworkers and a really supportive group of clients that helped that. The same thing, having a little tiny baby and being at work it's hard. But you figure out how to be able to pump milk and, provide for your baby as well as, still being a good veterinarian. And you just do it with a little less sleep than you're accustomed to. It certainly gets easier. I think at this point, both my kids and Jen's kids are older now, so they're a bit more self-sufficient. So I can, leave them in the truck listening to an audio book and know that they're going to be there without having driven away or, burned anything down. When they were toddlers, it was a bit more challenging, and I had to be really careful kind of where I brought them. But it is, I think, navigating those responsibilities as both an owner and a mother and a veterinarian are something I will be constantly evolving and trying to improve probably my whole career, because that is not something you can get good at and just stay good at. You have to change with the changing demands of both work and life.
Yeah, I love that you brought up bringing your kids to like an on-call situation, because I think that honestly, it might even show your clients that you're less robotic, like it's so easy to just go through the motions. And so they probably enjoy that, it shows like a softer side of you. And I think that as women, that could be so beautiful sometimes. But I have a follow-up question in the sense of, how do you suggest that new grads approach time management and having that quote unquote work-life balance, because it's like you said, it's like that may or may not exist. It's so hard to set up boundaries when you're new at a place, right? Like you just feel like, you don't really have the ability to say that because you haven't worked there long enough.
Yeah.
So what approaches would you take?
Well, partly we kind of set up recently 4-day work week for our all of our associates, because I need them to have enough time to not be working. They need to have time to be doing other things that they think bring them joy. And when I started, it was a 5-day work week. We were working either every other weekend or every third weekend on call. And I did not feel like I had enough time that was for me to do things that were not work related. And I was still trying to get stuff caught up on my days, quote unquote, off. So I want to kind of set the precedent that, like, when you are off, that's your time. And we're going to try really hard not to bother you if possible. Being said, Wednesdays are my day off. Today's Wednesday, and every Wednesday I end up doing management stuff, or I'm going to a farm this afternoon. And sometimes that actually makes the most sense, and it's fine. But that's my choice. That's the way we're doing it, and that is my choice. The one thing that is sticky, and maybe it's just me that's not good at this as far as boundaries go, is that I feel like you create a lot of trust and a lot of your client relationships by being available to people when they're in situations that are tough, especially on the cattle side of things and on the equine side of things. Some of these farms you see these farmers every week. You're there every week for a couple hours. You get to know these people really, really well. They become friends. They become almost family members. And for the most part, that's one of the best parts about my job. I have a lot of extended families and very strong relationships with people. But most of them have my cell phone number, and most of them will text me with questions and stuff. They don't usually abuse it. And oftentimes it is significantly easier for me to answer a question about something that's going on this farm that I'm very familiar with, that I know the ins and outs of, than them calling the clinic and asking another doctor that has no idea kind of what the situation is. And then, the delay in response and sometimes the difficulty getting that answer, if it's not clear cut, isn't worth it, in my opinion. So I have no issue with people. I just got a message, actually, that's why I shut my phone off, from a client asking a question that's very legitimate, and it's, I have no issue with that coming in on a day that I'm not, quote unquote, working. Some of our new grads have separate phones. They have a practice phone and then they have a personal phone. And when they're not working, they shut off their work phone, and that is fine. That is perfectly fine. I do feel like some availability and attention to, basic questions does help build that rapport and that trust. So there's a fine line between, like, prioritizing your own time and, like, being available for clients. So I don't know that I'm the best example on how to do that. I think having people, being really responsive during your work hours and stuff is great. And then, if people text or call late, then, saying, hey, I'm happy to correspond with you during business hours, which are from 7:30 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. or whatever, just kind of being clear about those boundaries. But I don't.
Yeah, I think that you brought up such an important point, especially when you're saying that these are really important clients to you and you have fostered that relationship. Like, I wouldn't have thought about that. Like, you're continuing to build that relationship. And maybe if you're off for 2 days and you put your phone away and you don't look at it, then the care that the animal should have received 2 days ago didn't happen. And so I didn't think about that. So I appreciate you bringing up that perspective. How do you prevent work from impacting family time? I know you said you don't schedule family time or any events on Mondays because you're on call. Other than that, and scheduling parent-teacher conferences and all of that, how do you make sure you're present for your family when you need to be?
Yeah. I mean, I do try and not be on my phone when I'm home if I can. I mean, my husband's a dairy farmer, and he's constantly being berated by the farm for various questions and stuff. So our kids are relatively aware that when our phone rings and we run off and answer it, that it's probably something important that we need to deal with. But in general, when I'm hanging out with my kids, I'm trying to be very present and, cooking dinner with them and reading books and, coaching soccer and doing all the things. That is something I have to remind myself of, though, sometimes, because sometimes at the end of the day, you've just worked a long day, you're exhausted, and you just want to like check out, like dissociate maybe. And I'm like, no, like this is my time I get to actually spend with my kiddos. I'm going to make the most of it, but it's a conscious effort. I wish it was always like second nature. But sometimes I have to tell myself like, hey, he's only going to be 7 for, a couple more months. Like this is just such a fun age. You really need to like soak it all up. That being said, too, I'm human. And there are days when I'm just like, we're going to everybody's going to bed early because it's been a day. And, there's going to be some TV tonight, too. But I think the more you can kind of try and live in the now, and there's a practice, I think it's called the practice of pause or something along those lines, where just pausing to reflect about a couple of things that happened that brought you joy during the day can kind of like reset your brain as you like transition from work to home. And that's been helpful to kind of, if you've had a bad case that you're fretting about, to try and leave that at the truck and not bring it into the kitchen. Easier said than done sometimes, but it does kind of help to have a bit of a check-in with yourself as you transition. And the kids, I talk to the kids about doing that as well. If they've had a rough day at school, we talk about it, and then we're going to talk about some things we're looking forward to, the things that we want to do this evening or whatever, and kind of just sort of reframe the situation from so-and-so is mean, blah, 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 and complaining and this and that, to something that is more positive. Because positive thinking makes a huge difference in everybody's demeanor.
Do you have support systems like home or in the workplace that make juggling all these different roles that you have as an owner, a practitioner, a mother, a wife, all these different hats that you wear?
So I'll read Jen's answer for this. She said, yes, just get all the right people, husbands, families, an amazing partner, and wonderful support staff. If you can get everyone to understand what the goals are and teach them how to do their jobs and empower them to make decisions, it's amazing how they will carry you through anything when the going gets tough. Case in point, when you get diagnosed with breast cancer and really need to step back. So yeah, it's the support networks are incredible. Then they seem to come out of the woodwork, especially when stuff gets really tough. I think my go-to people, I have like 2 besties that have kids that are the same age as mine. And, we talk about everything all the time, like constant stream chat. I also have a group of mostly vet moms. There's a couple that aren't moms, but they're vets. And we have a WhatsApp group, and we talk all day and all night about cases and husbands and clients and all the things. And they're spread all over the country. There's a couple in Texas. There's one in Tennessee. There's one in Kentucky. There's a couple of us, but Jen and I are both in that group. And they've all been people that have either worked here or worked close to here, or we have some sort of relationship with. And although I don't necessarily see them in person regularly, we all stay very close in contact. And it's like the sounding board for kind of whatever. I sent my kid's goofy school picture to them, and they sent back a crazy set of x-rays, and that has been really vital. The other support networks, certainly we rely heavily on our colleagues. We call each other all the time for different things, especially the new grads. We try and check in really regularly and see how they're doing and see where they need more support. But there's a couple Facebook groups that are great. So the Bovine Vet Truck, or I think it's renamed now Bovine to Bovine Vet or something like that. That's a great sounding board for, case help. Moms with a DVM is a huge group of like super awesome moms. When I joined that group, there's like 1,200 members, and now there's like 12,000 or 15,000 or something crazy. It's a huge number. And that's a group to be reckoned with. If you need help, there's going to be somebody in that group that has the knowledge that you need, or support, or knows a person that knows a person. So when you're looking at, cancer resources and stuff like that, we're pooling groups to say, hey, where should she go? Who knows somebody here? How can we help So that's been really vital as well. Not to mention our families are both super supportive, and that we both live. So my husband and I live kind of in the middle of both of our parents. So I grew up in Vermont and my husband grew up in Pennsylvania. So we don't have the family support as far as like babysitting and having people like real close by, but we have really awesome, amazing families nonetheless that are very supportive from afar. So we have family group chats that we talk all the time, and we make it a point to see everybody as much as we can. So that kind of outside support has been really, really helpful as well.
That's so important. I really like that you brought up the Facebook groups because I know a bunch of my classmates are in them because they're just like, it makes the daunting task of being a mom and a vet and a wife, like it makes it seem a little bit easier when you have that much support behind you. So maybe I should join that soon.
Totally.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
that's a good idea. So what are some self-care practices or mindsets that help you stay resilient? Are there
Yeah.
specific routines or strategies that keep you motivated and centered with all this craziness?
So I really enjoy yoga. So I try and do yoga at least a couple days a week if I can. There's a little yoga studio I enjoy practicing at, or just in my bedroom with my yoga mat. Um, so that really helps, I think, ground me from a mental standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint. Trying to stay as fit as I can is important too for what I do. I also ride my horse. I love riding, and I don't ride as consistently as I should, but it brings me joy every time I get in the saddle. So I try and get out as much as I can. Um, we as a family love hiking, so we hike as much as we can. My boys have a pair of brown Swiss oxen that they like to drive around, which has been really fun, kind of helping. I don't know what we're actually doing with that. We're all learning together because I've never had any oxen before. But Buster and Bruce provide a lot of comic relief for the family. Um, Traveling, it doesn't happen often, but we try and go, on an international trip like every other year, and, go somewhere in the States in the opposite years to kind of expose our kids to the world. Just checking in with my husband, like making a point to actually have like a real conversation with him and not just be, you know, two passing ships at night. um, that, he's my rock. He's my absolute partner in everything. I couldn't do it without him. Our schedules are nuts because he leaves at like 4 a.m, and I do the kid routine in the morning, and then in the evening he picks up the kids from daycare because I don't really have a set end time. So we both kind of have our like roles. But then get a sick kid. So he has my poor sick kid today and bringing him to the doctor, and I had him yesterday. He had him the day before. So we kind of pass off, who gets the responsibility of trying to heal up our little boy who's I don't know, he's barking like a dog right now. He's got some sort of croupy cough thing that is apparently running around. I also like singing, so I joined a choral group. We're doing like a Christmas cantata, which also brings me joy. I have too many hobbies, actually, is what it boils down to. I love them all.
There's never such thing as too many hobbies. It's actually such an important thing that you're doing for yourself. And I love that you continue to add things, like I myself am looking for something new to do that's not super expensive. I'm like, maybe I'll get into watercolor or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's so important. I think that you said mentioning that you're taking time to check in with your husband can be really, really important in making sure that you guys don't become roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that gets overseen a lot. And I know people that struggle with that. And so thanks for bringing that up because yeah, it takes a conscious mind to do that.
I have a
Hey,
response from Jen on that too.
yeah, please.
She said, I make sure to take time twice a week for my favorite rejuvenation activities and relish the relationships that you make in this field. The trust and long lasting friendships you will make with your clients and coworkers are what keeps us going day to day. There's actually so much gratitude every day from our clients that just so easily gets overshadowed by one bad case or one interaction. But if you really pay attention to how much good there is every day, it's always less daunting.
Dr. Brown, it has been a pleasure to chat with you this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for asking us to participate. This was fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. I am so glad that we had you on this podcast. This was interesting for me, especially being such a small animal person. Like I didn't realize all the challenges that you guys would have. Like I think the most like eye-opening thing for me was how you talked about having like your clients having your phone numbers, because I mean for me, like I think I could apply that to family members having my phone number, or mom will accident or like slip my number to one of her friends. I'm like, no, mother, we can't be doing that anymore. But yeah, I think that like the same thing can apply in that sense, like I may not be actively giving it out, but there's still so many people that know us and are happy that we're in this field and want to count on us even in times when it's not really,
Convenient.
best. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was a unique thing that you said, especially with new grads or other people having two phones and stuff. Like there's different ways of handling that, and that's that's okay. And I like that you said that that's okay.
Yeah. The other thing that when we first started having babies at this practice, I think Dr. Jen was the first, I think she was the first practitioner to get pregnant and have a baby. And navigating how, as a practice, we support our pregnant moms and our postpartum moms has been a big focus for us too, because we've been there and we know how hard it is. So making sure that we provide people with what they need schedule wise and help try and accommodate daycare schedules and pickups and drop-offs. It's a lot, and just I think we're doing a okay job at that, but we've tried hard to be as accommodating as we possibly can in those situations, and that is something that I think a lot of practices need to kind of think about, because as the workforce has gone from predominantly men to predominantly female, this is going to be something that every practice probably faces. And instead of being reactive to it, kind of being proactive as far as having a plan in place and being flexible about that plan changing last minute is really important. And I hope that everybody is kind of thinking along those lines and trying to make life in practice as a mom as good and as feasible as possible, so that we can keep people in veterinary medicine as long as they want to be here.
It's like you supported Jen, and then like you and your staff supported Jen when she was pregnant, and then I'm sure they did the same for you, and you guys all scratch each other's backs when you need it. And that's I think that's definitely awesome that you have so many doctors at your hospital and you get that. I think it could be a really big challenge for smaller scale hospitals, but I know that being mixed animal, like that would also be challenging, right? Like if you have one equine vet and your one equine vet's out, like what that's its own little
but she has a baby. One of our cattle only vets has two, and so I mean you figure out how to do it, and hopefully make it so that it is better than it was when we were in that situation. Every maternity leave, every pregnancy, we hopefully are better supporting people would be our goal for sure.
Also, I mean, I know that like being a woman can be awesome, because we get to play so many different roles in so many different people's lives. But I love that you guys are trying to be better every day. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.